appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight because I go to a lot of places where 6 or 7 people show up for whatever event, and people just aren't interested today, and it seems like the younger you go, the less interested they are, and the young people will tell you they don't even vote for president because it really doesn't make a difference, it doesn't mean anything. They have no idea how many people fight for this country every day and how many people die for this country, so they have that right to vote, and they give it up on a regular basis. So I appreciate the fact that y'all are able to fill your rooms. So, how long do I actually have tonight?
Gosh, it's up to you.
It's up to me.
Well, if everybody gets up and walks out,
They will.
we'll know.
When 2 get up to walk, I'm done talking no matter what I'm talking about.
Better have some
Mark's
jokes.
going to keep an eye on it. You want me to go for, because I don't want to run 2 over. I don't want to get y'all over, but I'm very passionate about this sheriff's race, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm passionate about it. So let's just roll with it, and if it gets long-winded, I'm always good at just stopping what I'm doing and letting y'all tell me what I need to be looking at and what I need to be talking about. Most of you have a card sitting in the chair next to you, this card right here. I want to explain to you first, the people that you see on that card, the lady in the pink is my wife, LaDon. LaDon and I have been, we knew each other since we were 16 years old. We were childhood sweethearts. We pretty much met at the First Baptist Church of Orlando because her family moved here from West Virginia and took over the Orlando Rescue Mission. She's been a part of feeding Orlando's homeless for the last 33 years, as have my mother and father-in-law and my own mom. My mom's 82 years old and she still drives herself to the mission about 4 days a week at least, and goes down and volunteers and does what she does at the mission. She's a great lady, and she is a bulldog. She actually went to school right down the street at Tavares High School, and she played on the Tavares High School basketball team of graduating class of 1947, I believe. I can say that because she's not here with me tonight. But my wife's also not with me. Both of my in-laws just had a sickness come up in the past 2 weeks, and they are both at Shands Hospital in Gainesville. My mother-in-law is not doing real well. So I'm a little bit off my game tonight, but not a whole lot, because when she's not with me, it's a whole different thing. And when you've been together since you were 16 years old, some of you know what I'm talking about. The son that's sitting there in the blue shirt that looks like Joel Osteen actually is a lot like Joel Osteen, and the fact that he's been traveling the country and traveling the world already doing mission trips. He carries a message with him because he has a prolonged belief, just like I do, that God put you here for a reason. I know that God put me here to be a cop, and he, at 23 years old, has already obtained his master's degree from the University of Florida, and he went to public schools here in Lake County. So don't let anybody tell you that it can't work, uniforms or no uniforms. If kids want to learn, they can learn. And he walked out of the University of Florida honoring me, his parents, by earning that degree. So, great kid. My daughter actually she works at Lake County Schools. She goes to the University of Central Florida, and she graduates in August. She's getting married in December to a guy who is a paramedic fireman, and he was actually hired here in Lake County. We may talk about that in a few more minutes. He was hired here. 5 months went by, 6 months went by, 7 months went by. He had already been through orientation, but Lake County didn't have the money to put him on the job, and he had to take a job elsewhere. I wanted him here in Lake County. I purchased property here in Lake County so I could see my children, my great-grandchildren raised in this county, because I love Lake County. And he had to go somewhere else because we had to scale back and couldn't build the fire department that they were going to build, that he would have been staffing. So my daughter works at the Hill School, works with autistic children. She has a passion for that. How she does it, she comes home and tells me stories, and it's like being in a war zone. I thought it was bad for me that some of these school teachers actually face a battle zone every day that they go to work and they need our support. So, what you need to know about me. I've been a cop with Orange County for 31 years. I worked in Orange County because I had to be able to raise those 2 kids, because I tried to go to work for George Knupp. Like I said, I've built 6 houses here in Lake County. I wanted to live here and work here, and George Knupp said, you'll take a $15,000 pay cut the year that I hire you. That's the best I can do. So I couldn't come to work for the Lake County Sheriff's Office as bad as I wanted to work here. I had to make that commute to Orlando, just like Ms. Eaton has to make the commute to Orlando. A lot of us, because it's a bedroom community here, we've had to go to Orlando. We don't want to. We don't want to lose other cops going to Orlando. We want to keep them here in this community by taking care of them. I'll speak about that more in just a second. You should know that I was honored by my agency as being nominated one of the top cops in the country. Not in Orange County, but in the country, because of the passion that I have for doing my job. I actually used to do this job back in the old days when you could go to work and not be paid for it. I was willing to go to work and not be paid for it if it meant taking bad guys off the street. But because of something called the Garcia ruling now, if a deputy feeds his canine, you have to pay him a half hour a day for feeding the dog. So it's just where our country is going. I've been through 2 shootings in my career, and I've been shot at 3 times. I shot men because I had to stop their actions, because of something they were doing, not because of something that I was doing. It wasn't something cops go to work to do. We don't, believe it or not, go to work at night hoping that we'll get in trouble, that we'll get into a shooting. We'll have to fight our way out, because with that comes lawsuits. In my case, lawsuits that are so ridiculous and frivolous, because that's the thing that has evolved in this country, that the individual that I shot, one of them, actually sued the auto auction where I shot him at because he had stolen 8 of their cars but was a trapped rat and couldn't get out of the auction. He sued the auction because they left the keys in the car. So,
Did he win?
no, sir, he didn't. When I say I have a passion for law enforcement, this is why I have a passion, because I've seen this stuff. We have an open primary. I don't know if y'all know it, but we had a write-in candidate that did not qualify. So this is open to everybody now. Republicans, Democrats, no party affiliations, wherever you are in life, wherever you're from, as long as you're registered here in Lake County, you will be able to vote to make a difference in Lake County. We talk about leadership starting at the top, and most of us, that's why you're here, you know that we have poor leadership at the top. So I'm challenging y'all today to listen to what I have to say, and then I need you to help support our cause and support our message, and that is this. If we can't get leadership from the top, then let's start at the bottom. Your local sheriff has the right and the authority to stand up against local government and do great things. And I am willing to do that for you, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm willing to do that and how long I'm willing to do it for in just a few minutes. Let's talk about community involvement real quick. My wife and I actually made the decision. We bought a house in downtown Claremont, and the house ended up being the first mayor of Claremont. That he raised his family in. He actually gave the first 10 lots to actually to make the city of Claremont what it is today. His name was Alexander Kern, and when I bought the house, I didn't know the history behind the house, but once I found out what the history was, I couldn't tear the house down. It was an old Victorian home. It's a beautiful home. And if you go now, you will see it at the lakefront in Claremont. When you go to the trail near the railroad depot, you will see that beautiful Victorian home standing on the right-hand side. I gave that to the South Lake Historical Society, and then they realized they didn't have the money to move it. After much debate with my family and my wife and I worrying about the fact that our kids were going to be going away to college, we ended up paying $45,000 of our money to move that home. I'm not bragging to tell you that. I'm telling you that there's a lot of politicians in this county that are great at spending other people's money, but they've never come out of their pocket with a dime of their own. And you're going to see something different in me that you haven't seen before, and that's proof for you, because I didn't do that when there was an election coming up. I didn't plan on running for anything again in my life, but that was the right thing to do, and I wanted to see. When I come to Tavares, I can see the places, some of the places that my mom and dad used to live when they got married. They used to live above Boulware's drugstore when they first got married, right in downtown Tavares. I used to play at that courthouse as a kid when these streets used to be clay. My mom's favorite game when they were a kid was to find a dead snake and drag it up and down the clay road, because that's what you had to do. These were clay roads here. So we donated that house. This past weekend, we were at the Damn Smoker, and we were putting on an event, not for me to raise money. We were raising money for homeless veterans, because that's what a sheriff should be doing. He should be a catalyst to bring the community together. And I don't know if y'all realize it, but we have a ton of homeless veterans here in Lake County. And if we're going to serve anybody, who better to serve than people who have served us and have served this country? So we've got to do something to give back. As a community, we need to give back. And as your sheriff, I want to bring the community together to be able to do just that. I told you before that I built 6 homes in Lake County. I'm an entrepreneur. I get involved in a lot of different things, and I've even built one home for a family that wasn't mine because they had a loss in their family that was very tragic. And it was something that I felt I needed to do. Again, I know that God put me here for a reason. He gave me the skills to be a cop, and people will tell you, just like I have, I'm honored to be honored as one of the top cops in the country by my agency because of the passion that I have to do this job. My passion is going to carry over to y'all. It's going to be for each and every one of you, and I'll tell you at closing why it's important to you. Let's talk about the budget real quick. Y'all are a great group for me because y'all are actually interested in how government spends money. In Lake County right now, with an agency of 750 people, and I want you to understand that when I go to work at night, I represent the Sheriff of Orange County from 6 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. I have 5 lieutenants that work for me, that rotate. There's only 2 of them working tonight. If one of them's off, they cover and I cover. We cover the entire county. When I log onto that computer system, I have between 300 and 700 deputies countywide that are responsible for anything from terrorist acts at Walt Disney World or SeaWorld to handling the UCF kids that are out of control and a little bit unruly at night because they've had too much to drink. That's what we do all night long. I answer to the sheriff directly. I call him to let him know about every death and everything that's going on in the county, from sexual batteries to aggravated batteries if people end up in the hospital. I know my job. I know what I do. 750 people in an agency, and there's an undersheriff to help the sheriff manage those 750 people. There's only 248 sworn employees, deputies on the street. You need to know that because I don't need an undersheriff. The undersheriff here makes $115,000 to $124,000 a year, depending on which site you look at. The county commission says it was $124,000. You pay a sheriff $138,000 a year. That is set by the number of people in this county, that live in this county. You don't need an undersheriff that gets paid that much money because he happens to be the sheriff's friend. My friends need to get a job just like I had to. They need to work for it. The other staff members below that, you've got 3 majors that make $110,000 a year. Then you've got 6 captains making $95,000 a year. That should be important to you because as a captain in Orange County, I make under $95,000 a year. Think about that. Orange County is a big county, and I'm a captain of a very large agency that's given me a lot of unique skills. I've worked for 4 different sheriffs, and I've worked for 4 presidents of this country, doing everything from motorcades to bomb sweeps to you name it. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what should be important to us is how they're spending our money. It's always easy to spend other people's money. So you look at those salaries, look at how much they're making, then look at what they're driving. Your sheriff drives a Chevy Tahoe that's got to be close to $40,000 or $50,000. It's even supposed to have a remote engine start in it. My guarantee to you is I will never drive any vehicle in the next 12 years that I work for you, the taxpayers of this county. I will never drive a car that costs over $26,000, period. If it's good enough for our deputies to drive, and you can buy a police package Tahoe that's stripped, doesn't have carpet in it, doesn't have that kind of stuff, but it does the job. It does everything it needs to do for half the money that our local sheriff uses to drive a car. The undersheriff has a big GMC 3500 pickup truck. Nobody can really say why he drives it. It's to go back and forth from home to the office because, you know, as a staff member, that's pretty much what you're doing. That should be important to y'all because, again, that's your money. And it's wasted money that should be spent on the deputies that serve this county and that serve this community. Firefighters, school teachers, and cops should be where we're putting our resources. We've got to make sure that they do that. You're also going to see that I'm going to look at deputies that do civilian work. Y'all were talking about earlier, when the lady first started, you're talking about people who are double dipping, people who have already retired from the job and then turn around and come back to work. In Lake County, there's at least 2 or 3 of those folks. One's a captain who actually bragged about the fact that he got that lump sum payment. He retired, he left for 30 days, and he came back to work. They held his position, they held his car, and he makes $95,000 a year, and he bragged that when he came back to work, he got a pay raise. Folks, that's wrong. Now, I can tell you as your sheriff, your current sheriff is in the drop program. He's a part of drop. I didn't drop. I'm in the investment plan because I want to continue working until God tells me to quit working. I don't make that call. He's going to make that call. So I went to the investment plan, and that investment plan will continue. I will continue to stay in the Florida retirement system just like anybody else would. I'm not in the drop program. You need to pay attention to that drop program because even though they changed the rules to it, there's still people that can manipulate it. Even if they stay out 6 months or they stay out a year and then come back to work, if a sheriff's willing to give them that title, they're willing to give them that money, there's nothing y'all can do about it because the sheriff can do what he wants to do. You talked about a minute ago, the sheriff doesn't have meetings. I will be having meetings, but what you're going to see for my meetings, you're going to see me in the grocery store, you're going to see me at the mall, you'll see me wherever, because you're going to see me in a marked patrol car. I'll be the only sheriff in the state of Florida, so you will actually know who your sheriff is, and I'm going to tell you a story in just a second of why that's important to you. You should be able to see my car in the parking lot of Sonny's or any other restaurant in this town and go, there was a deputy at my house yesterday and he didn't do a good job, and I want to tell the sheriff about it. You shouldn't have to call the office and be given somebody else's number to call, the captain's number to call. I'm the one that's responsible to you, the taxpayer, because you pay me and you elected me to do this job. things that I want to do at the sheriff's office is make sure that we have a bidding process, because right now, it's who you know. If you know the sheriff and you've been able to make those contacts, then you are the guy that's got the contract and you're the one who gets all the money. Again, that should be important to us, because we should be going through a bidding process, because if you have somebody coming to your home, do you hire the first one that walks through the door? Or do you check with 2 or 3 different people to find out how you can save $1 and how you can put more money in your family's pocket? That's the stuff that we need to be looking at, the things that we need to do. Why do I have such a passion for this law enforcement thing? I don't know. I told you, I think God has just put me here for a reason. That's why I'm supposed to be doing this. I will tell you that this job is very important to me, and about 1.5 years ago, I found out why my job is so important. 1.5 years ago, my cousin went missing on the first day of school. She was a first-grade school teacher. When I got the phone call, the sheriff's office in St. Johns County, which is St. Augustine, I want everybody to be clear, it didn't happen here, but it happened in St. Augustine. The response that I got from that agency was, she's 50 years old, she's allowed to be missing. They didn't enter into the computer, they didn't put her in the system, they didn't do the steps that are necessary right away for me to be able to make sure that my cousin was safe. I've been trained to do a job, and I have a special set of skills. I grabbed a computer, which I did not use, because you can't use our computers to do stuff that's not within the scope of your duties. So I called a 16-year-old kid on the phone while I was driving with my gun, my fanny pack, and stuff I needed to do my job. And I had somebody run Google Earth to find my cousin, because she had been recently divorced, find her newest boyfriend. And all I had to work from was the name Tim Rose. Tim Rose would become a very important factor in my life over the next few hours as I was driving and was finding out where he lived, what he did. And it was a little bit tricky to track him down, but we went to sunbiz.org because we knew he was a handyman. And we found a Tim Rose, and we found where he lived. And within 2.5 hours, that kid could put me right in front of that house. I called the deputy back that had been there earlier that day that didn't even ask if he could search the home, and said if I wanted to play around at golf, would I start out at this subdivision right next to World Golf Village? And he said you'd be in the right place, because I didn't want to get the deputy into trouble. At the point that I pulled into the subdivision, I actually saw my cousin's car parked in his driveway. Now, y'all haven't had the training I've had, but wouldn't you start thinking something's up? Wouldn't you think as a young deputy, a 20-year-old deputy even, that you'd think there's something wrong here? They didn't have her in the computer, they didn't do anything, and I'm going to make a long story short by telling you, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I watched that man come out, get in his truck, and I followed him around St. Augustine while he was burying my cousin's body parts. At the time that I was following, I didn't know what he was doing, I just knew that his behavior was suspicious, right? We all know that's suspicious behavior. When he came back to the house, I followed him around as he was doing counter surveillance. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was looking to see if there were cops that were following him, or if there were any in the community, in the neighborhood. He went to the house, made a circle in the cul-de-sac, and backed up to the garage door. What was coming next? He was fixing to load her body up and try to get her out of there so there'd be no evidence of any crime. Because he knew we were going to end up coming back. He knew somebody would come back the next day, and he had to get her out of there. At that point, I knew in my heart that my cousin was already dead. I called the sheriff's office and told them that I needed a deputy and I needed somebody out there. And the first 2 or 3 deputies that I was going to get, and let me back up a little bit, right before I actually made the phone call to get the deputies, at 3 in the morning, he came out of the house and came to get in the truck, load her up, and actually move her. I pulled into the cul-de-sac, rolled my window down, he and I made eye-to-eye contact, and that's the point where I decided I'm going to have law enforcement help here. He went back in the house, got a sawed-off shotgun. I got out of my car and actually went to the back of the house to make sure that he didn't run out the back door and try to get away from a crime scene. Now, I'm having to do all this as a civilian because I have to know what my rights are. But you need to know what your rights are, and you need to know that you can stand your ground and do the things you need to do when you have to do it if law enforcement fails to. The three deputies that showed up didn't agree with the fact that I thought I had enough for them to enter the house without cause, without a warrant, which they did, because those are the things that I do all night. I make those kind of decisions. And I asked them to see their watch commander. Their watch commander pulled up and said, I agree with you. We're going to start beating on the front door while we do a search warrant. At 8 o'clock in the morning, they kicked the front door open and found him laying in the living room floor with a sawed-off shotgun and a bottle of Oxycontin. He didn't even have enough courage to kill himself. He's currently serving life in prison with no chance of parole. He took a quick plea so he could avoid the electric chair because, again, he didn't really want to die. He was a coward. That's why he was beaten on my cousin. Why is this story important to y'all? Because it is what gives me a passion to continue to serve people. And I'm going to keep doing that in some capacity for the rest of my life. But as your sheriff, you can see the skills that I have, and I will tell you that there's a girl that's missing here in Lake County, up in the forest. And I can tell you that the excuses that I've heard on that one are, well, she was on drugs. If it was your daughter, would it make any difference if she was on drugs? Would you expect your sheriff to be out looking for her? And if it was the sheriff's daughter, would we have ever stopped looking? It shouldn't matter whether it's my daughter, your daughter, or anything in between. The one thing that I'm going to teach every deputy that works in this agency is, when they come to your home, it's the one time you've called for service probably in the entire time that you've been paying taxes for the last 10, 15, 20 years in Lake County. It's their turn. You treat each and every one of them like you're their sister, mother, father, brother, and I'll never get a complaint on how you handle calls. I'll never receive that phone call, because they'll just want to tell me when they see me in a restaurant or in my car that you did a great job. Let's talk about professionalism in Lake County. I've told you that I know. Would y'all not agree that I know how to do my job?
Yes.
I know how to be a cop, right?
Right.
All right. In your sheriff's office, since I started this campaign, there's been 3 deputies that have been arrested. 1 for drugs, selling drugs, 2 for theft. Why would a deputy commit theft? I saw on the front page of the paper today that he actually had other charges. Should we have ever hired him? It cost $120,000 to put a deputy on the street the very first year. So if those deputies leave us to go to Orange, Seminole, or Osceola County, you and I are paying that bill all over again. We're starting at the beginning. So we got to make sure that those people stay here. If we're not paying the people at the bottom for doing the job, they're going to leave us. If we continue to pay the people at the top and we continue to run Lake County government, and I'm not talking about anything but the sheriff's office, if we continue to work at that rate and the budget continues to rise and the sheriff says, well, I've cut the budget, I hope y'all know that the sheriff can say he's cut the budget. He can walk into the office at any given time and tell the county commission that I can't cut the budget. I've realized that I can't cut it to where I thought I could cut it, and I'm going to the governor of the state of Florida and telling him that I want my money, and you're going to have to give it to me. Because if I can convince the governor of Florida that I need that much money to operate, then that's what I'm going to get. The county commission doesn't have any control except requesting or asking. When you do a public records request at the county, you are a citizen. Wouldn't you expect to get the information back in a quick and timely manner? It's actually a Florida state statute that information has to be given you in a timely manner and at a cost that is not real prohibitive. When the county commission can't get their own public records, when the sheriff doesn't work with the county commission to the point that they can just make phone calls back and forth and work together to try to solve the problems of this community, then we need to do something of putting a sheriff in there that's willing to be a catalyst to bring the community together and is willing to sit down with the county commission and work out our problems. And I'm committing to you that for the next 12 years, I will be a part of working with the county commission, not working apart from. Right after I did a public records request from Lake County, somebody did a public records request on my daughter. She works at Lake County School. She's a government employee. You can do that anonymously. Now, after the story that I just told you about my cousin, can you understand why I'd be concerned about somebody anonymously going in and pulling the records? I've shot 2 men. And I put 1 in prison. I didn't put him in prison. A grand jury did because he tried to kill me. They put him in prison for 27 years. He was just released. I have a right, or I should have a right in this country, to know who's pulling public records on my child, my daughter, my son, what have you. You should be able to know who's pulling public records on you, but people can hide behind that. As your sheriff, I want to lead a national campaign to change that. If somebody wants information on your son or your daughter, you should at least be able to have to leave a name or leave information on who you are to obtain that information. Because you never know who is actually watching your son or your daughter. It's very important to me. So, I say all that and I tell you about passion. And I told you I was a little bit off tonight because my wife's not here with me and I'm wondering what's going on with her family. But how many of you know Sheriff Mack? Have you heard of Sheriff Mack? How about Sheriff Joe? Folks, I want to tell you here today, I promise you this. I'm going to give you the next 12 years of my life, guaranteed. There's no doubt about it. If you elect me as your sheriff, I'm going to work till I'm 63 or 64 years old because, again, I believe that's what God put me here to do. I'm willing to give you my life. I'm willing to give you everything that I have for the next 12 years because I love law enforcement. I have a passion for serving people. And you're going to see me out in the community literally raising money. We are the 4th in the state of Florida for children that are registered in Lake County schools that are homeless. There's kids that have to go to school every day in the same set of clothes they went to bed with the night before. And your sheriff and your elected officials should be working to do something about it. And if nobody else wants to, I do, because I have passion and compassion for everyone I come in contact with, because you know what? It could be us tomorrow. And if we're not willing to have a sheriff that's willing to stand up and fight government, and we're not willing to have somebody that's around to talk about the Sheriff Joe, the Sheriff Mac, the sheriff over in Polk County right now. You see him on TV all the time. You think he's bad? I'm telling you right now, I don't need a spokesperson. Because I'll tell you right now, if they come to Lake County, Florida, and they want to commit a crime against one of our citizens, we'll not only thump them, bite them, or do whatever we got to do to put them in the Lake County jail, but when they get to that jail, like Sheriff Joe, they're not going to like the stuff that they get when they come to the Lake County jail. The goal is to make sure they never want to come back there. That's what we should be shooting for. So if you elect me, you're going to see a Sheriff Joe, a Sheriff Mac, and that other guy over in Polk County all rolled into one to try to make a difference in this community and stand up and fight for y'all at every level, no matter what political party you belong to, what walk of life you come from, what social background you come from. I will fight for you till the very end, no matter what. When I mentioned Sheriff Mack, I talked to the guy on the phone for about an hour. He called me back the next day, said he had researched my website, he's researched me, and he literally said that he's willing to come down here and speak on my behalf. And on the 28th and 29th, I've asked him to keep his calendar open because I want to hear more about what he can teach law enforcement about protecting our communities and protecting ourselves. So with that said, you know what my beliefs are, you know where I stand. How many of you are willing to stand with me? Make sure tonight before you leave that you stop by the back door, you get our cards, you get our information. I need you to step out with us. And I need you to believe in the passion that I have for helping other people, because I cannot win this election without folks like y'all. Young people don't want to do it. It takes us as a generation, as a community, to get together and say we're not taking it anymore. God put us here for a reason. He gave us the right to have that Constitution. But God is the one who put the men on this planet that actually wrote that Constitution. It's not the Constitution that gives us our powers. Think about it. Thank you for letting me come in and speak to you tonight. I'm sorry that I'm so passionate about this that sometimes I blow people out of the room. I've got a lot of supporters that are behind me, but I need folks all over this county to get our message out and talk about why we need a change in Lake County, and you need a sheriff who will work with the county commission and work with other leaders. Thank you. No, go right ahead.
Oh. Didn't help much, did it? I have a question. You talked about the salary expenses on it. I heard the sheriff say last week that he hadn't given a raise in 4 years. But I'm reading this on a blog somewhere, and I don't know. But it surely came from the state. So what's right? And they're high salaries and big increases. What's the story?
I wouldn't say this till it got personal and somebody started getting information on my daughter, but I will tell you this. I've got to believe a group of county commissioners because they've supplied those numbers to the state of Florida. So I've got to go with the county commission on what they turned into the state. And I've got to look at some of the other things. When you've got government where they're willing to take those steps, it's not good for any of us. And I have to believe what I need to believe, and that is that the county commission supplied the numbers to the state of Florida that they provide like every other law enforcement agency does, and that's just what I believe. Y'all can choose to believe anything you want to, but I've seen other issues that we're having. You know, the sheriff said, I think yesterday, that he had suspended the deputy that was arrested without pay. The media says that he was suspended with pay. And I'm telling you that as a sheriff, I'm going to have and I'm kind of dumbfounded. Our legal person here at the Sheriff's Office in Lake County only makes $95,000 a year, but we've got sheriff staff that makes more. I'm thinking the most important position under me is my legal staff. If my attorney can tell me how I can stand up, because Eisenhower says you don't have to be the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I'm paraphrasing, but you don't have to be the sharpest knife in the drawer to hire the sharpest knife in the drawer. So I want to get the numbers guy who can show me how to make this budget work for the community. And I want to get folks who are going to give me an honest answer for any question that I ask so that we can move forward in government and we don't have citizenship. Something else that I'm going to do for you that hasn't been done. I'm putting my budget online. I'm going to show you every penny of your money that I spend. And if I need a new Tahoe, y'all pay me $138,000 a year, I'll go buy one. I don't need you to provide my folks with cars or equipment. And I will tell you, there's people at the Orange County Sheriff's Office that will tell you, I took over a unit that was one of the most effective units that we've ever had. It's called Auto Trap. Auto Trap was a part of Auto Theft when I took it over, and we literally would go out and look for stolen cars, and when we found them, they were cars that people had been carjacked. They came up to you while you were leaving Walmart, stuck a gun to your head, and took your car. So what did we do? We went and took the car back. We blocked that car in effectively. We would follow it with dogs, horses, helicopters, whatever it took, till they came to a natural stop, and we would block them where they couldn't run. And there were times when we made contact with that car, but your insurance company would rather replace your door. If that's what we had to do as a part of business, to take the people to jail that thumped you over the head with a handgun, they would rather pay for your door than to find that car burned in an orange grove the next day or find it in a lake 3 days later. They'd rather replace the door than replace the whole car. So these are the things that are going on, but as a sheriff, I've got to get an attorney who can sit there and tell me, this is what's important, this is where you can protect yourself, but you need to be able to protect the agency. You need to be able to protect the taxpayers of this county, and you need to know what the right answer is before you ever go to battle. And that's why it's important, just like the things with Sheriff Mack that he talks about. What I want to know is I want to have a plan from day one, wherever we ever do come up against local, or we come up against the federal government, I want to know what my rights are, don't you? And don't you want your sheriff to have a plan in place, not just, oh yeah, well I've heard about that and I read it and we've talked about it. I want to know what our plan is. And I want to know that as your sheriff I'm standing up for your rights and that I'm doing it right. Because I'm here to tell you again, seriously, my brother did this job for 31 years. He went home, took a uniform off, had a heart attack, and died. 53 years old. My father died at 57. They tell me I am in the best of health, and I get checked every single year, like clockwork. I'm here to tell you that I'm willing to give you my life for the next 12 years. And if God leads me further than that, I want to be your sheriff for the next 16 years, 18 years, or 20 years. Whenever God tells me it's done, it's done. Yes, ma'am.
This is my first meeting, and I hope this is a proper question. I just wonder, since you work for Lake County, do you feel safe running for sheriff against the current administration? I mean, is your family having any threats? And I know you're running for office, what that's going to sound like to you.
Ma'am, I'm only going to...
But we have a right to know that, too. We don't want anything to happen to you.
Well, I appreciate your question, and the only thing I will tell you is before this campaign is over, you will see.
I'm a nurse. I come out of it, honestly.
I will disclose before the end of this, in response to your question, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is actually doing some things right now because there's some things that have happened in my family over a sheriff's race. And if you've got a sheriff's office that is got that kind of involvement, we're going the wrong direction. Because this is not personal. The folks that I talk about when I talk about the salaries, it's not personal. And let me get it clear. I've got to have a staff as a sheriff. I'm not bringing people with me from Orange County that don't live in Lake County. I'm going to look over there for that staff. As long as you understand that this game ain't about us, it's about the community, and it's about the people we serve, then you will be one of my staff members. But if you can't adopt that, and this isn't the important message for you, then I just can't use you. I'll still use you as a deputy, maybe. I'll maybe use you at the courthouse. But you can't be a staff member if you don't believe in my message, that it's not about us, it's about the people we serve. Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you one question about the drop program. A lot of people are not aware that the drop program was pushed by the city. Now, I don't know about Lake I don't know about Lake, I know about Dade County.
Right.
They pushed that saying, we'll hire these guys back because it's cheaper to hire them back than to train somebody else. These guys already know. Now, that was their excuse. Now, it's not working, obviously.
Well, what happened was it started with school teachers, and it was a very good program.
Yep.
In the years that we had a very good economy. It worked. I mean, people weren't worried about where they were throwing the money. The state of Florida's got one of the strongest retirement programs in history, in the country. The issue is when you look at the reason that DROP was actually designed and the way it was supposed to serve law enforcement, firefighters, and school teachers is, well, you weren't making a lot of money up front. You weren't getting a $60,000 a year paycheck to be a school teacher. You were getting $35,000. So the reward was, is if you stayed with the community for 30 years, we're going to give you $350,000, $300,000, whatever it might be, depending on how long you serve. We're going to give you that money because you served the community. That's what it was meant to be. Then it got to firefighters. Then it got to law enforcement. It kind of took over everything. Well, then we went, in 2006, things started dropping off, and now the state of Florida is not doing as well with their money. Their retirement program is not as well funded as what it was at one time. And like the rest of us, well, some of us, because in 2006 the sheriff's budget continued to do this, and this. Everybody else quit spending. In county government, Lake County government, they had to do furloughs on Fridays, and people didn't get paid. I mean, Lake County employees were hurting from the Lake County side of government. Yet, Lake County Sheriff's Office employees are still pulling around barbecue pits, pulling in gated communities, because that's how the sheriffs here stay elected. They go into the gated communities with a guy carrying a gun and a badge that you pay high-risk retirement. Maybe you're in the DROP program. Maybe you already dropped out and dropped back in. And there he is cooking hamburgers and hot dogs that you paid for, making everybody feel good so he can get reelected. It's called campaigning on duty. Think about it. How many times have you seen the sheriff in the last 3 years, and how many times have you seen him in the last few months on TV? Press release after press release. They were doing press releases on stuff that happened a year ago. You're going to see me in your community all the time. And I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff that they do that costs you money in overtime, I'm not doing that. I'll give you a dog and pony show once or twice a year at a large community event or something where I have you come out because I want you to see the people that serve you. This isn't about me. It's about the cop that's out there every day putting his life on the line to serve this community. It's about the school teacher that walks into school in the morning and tells the kid she's going to take away his phone because it keeps ringing, and he pretty much tells her off and threatens to shoot her. That's the thing that we got to fix. And when you drop out, you retire, there are ways that I can use you as a sheriff for the community. And that's simply this. You saw the Casey Anthony trial at the Orange County Courthouse, right? I was in charge of that. The 2 years that they did, the only 2 years that I had been in an administrative position off the road because I love serving people so much was to handle the Casey Anthony trial. I had to do the budgeting for it. I had to make sure the judge was secured while he was in Clearwater. You saw me on TV all the time. It's not because I wanted to be there. It's because I wanted to do the job, but I didn't want to be on TV. I'm not a movie star. So you have those things that are going for you. And with the Casey Anthony trial, it was a unique experience because it hadn't been done before. If I can handle something of that magnitude, I can handle 750 employees here. But it's important to you to understand what Florida does with retirement, and when a sheriff lets somebody drop back in, it costs you money. When I take part-time employees, when I take the deputy that's dropped out and he's retired and they left from OPD in a totally different retirement program, and I recruit them to come in as part-time deputies to work at the Orange County Courthouse, what have I done for the taxpayer? I've eliminated health care costs, I've eliminated that full ride package, and they're there as a part-time employee making $20 an hour. We call them in the morning and say, hey, we've got courtrooms that are open, are you available? No. Okay, go fishing. But you hit the next one and they come in. Or there's some that are already scheduled to come in, and if they don't want to, they know how to hit the system and make sure that somebody else shows up so that the judges are secure. If you talk to any judge in Orange County, you will find out that never in the history of somebody being at the sheriff's office at the courthouse have they ever had interaction with a captain like they had with me. I literally went in, and just like you talked about with my daughter, I literally went in and showed a couple of judges during one of our training things that I put on for them. I said, here's your daughter, here's your son, here's your package with all of your personal information in it. here's where you live. All this stuff is protectable because you're a judge. You need to protect your family. I take this job very, very seriously. Please protect your family and your children because you sentence people every day. Think about what a judge does during the daytime, and they're more at risk than any law enforcement officer because we face a few bad guys. They face them every day, and they have to sentence them, and there's people that leave those courtrooms screaming. You have no idea. It was an education for me when I went to the courthouse. We actually have people that show up at the Orange County Courthouse for court wearing bunny slippers and pajamas. Baseball hats on sideways, you name it. And I just looked at it and I was like, we're going to change this because they're not going to get through the front door if they're not appropriately attired with respect to the court. And there's things that you can do, but again, your hands are tied. It's a part of government today. But I'm telling you, as your sheriff, I'm going to fight government for you if government needs fighting. If it's just stupid, then we're going to call it stupid, and we're going to play our own game. The grant stuff, I will not take money if there's any strings attached to it. Plain and simple. I don't want your money if I have to do it your way. We'll take everything we can get to help this community, but I'm not going to do it if I have to play the rules your way. Yes, ma'am.
I saw something on the South Lake Tea Party website about saying that you were actually endorsed by Sheriff Matt, and I can't find that anywhere on any literature,
right.
YouTube or anything. Did they get it wrong, or has he just agreed to work with you?
He's agreed to speak on my behalf, and he's going to come down. I think we've looked at the 28th and the 29th. And I had a I told him, I said, you know, honestly, I feel like a college student because I feel like I'm calling the professor, so go easy on me. But I want to know about how I can stand up and do these things. And what I said is that not an endorsement, but that he and I have been talking. He actually sent me an email back. I can show you the email that said, I'll do anything I can for you. I've read over your site, your information. I believe in what you're trying to do. And I'd love to come to Florida and talk on your behalf, so we're just putting together the right days. All right? Yes, sir.
Sandy, you mentioned the sheriff has 750 people.
Yes, sir.
Thereabouts. What amount of those are patrol officers? And I would imagine that you can have a ratio of patrol officers to all others. And how does that stack up to what you think is an optimum ratio?
There's 248 sworn personnel at the last count that we saw at the Lake County Sheriff's Office. But those aren't all deputies on the street. Now, you saw recently where they had, he says they've had 25 to 30 positions open for the last 2 to 3 years. If you use $40,000 as a base salary, because you don't know that they're all deputies, they could have been in court, they could have been anywhere. If you use $40,000 times 30 employees, that's $1.2 million. Chris Daniels gave back $900,000 when he was a sheriff. Fred Cobb gave back, I think, just a little over $1 million. Our sheriff has never given back more than $200,000. So where's your money? Think about that. Where is the money? If those positions had been held open, then why didn't we get money back? It's not 2004 anymore, and we're not all living high on the hog. So why didn't we get a refund? Why didn't we get some money back? Those are the tough questions we should be asking. But now he's talking about, well, I'm not going to fill those positions. Don't you think that relates to your public safety? What's the biggest threat to our national security today? Truly, what's the biggest threat? Death. If we can't buy our way out, you just can't keep printing money. So if we can't keep up this thing of buying our way out, then why do we think that at the county level that our officials should be held accountable, and you shouldn't look at me and say, where's that money? If you've held those positions open, and what are those positions? If they're deputies on the street, then you are not safe. Because we've got to have, if you haven't noticed, and I'm sure a lot of y'all have, it's coming at us from every direction. We're getting more and more and more developed, and if you're on the Mount Dora end, you see it coming up 441 out of Orange County. If you're on the south end, you see it coming up Highway 50 out of Orange County. Jerry Demings did a very effective job at looking at every single thing in the agency at where he could cut money to put deputies on the street. That's driving people towards us. But when you also have government that tends to bring services out further and further and further, you're bringing those folks to us because they now say, I want to get my kid out of Orange County or out of Orlando or out of Miami. People coming from South Florida up here, I mean, I'm talking to more people from South Florida now than I am talking to snowbirds who said they left South Florida because the crime is so bad. We got to stop it now. And if that's the case, then I should have been hoarding your money for the last few years so we could put more deputies on the street so we can make sure that crime is actually reduced. The sheriff's office for the last 4 or 5 years has been at the bottom of the list as far as cases cleared. Ask the Tula PD, all the municipalities are beating the sheriff in cases cleared. A man stood up at a forum last night and he said, my house got broken into. What are you doing about it? I've heard this story since day one. My lawnmower's been stolen. What are you doing about it? And you ask him, did you get a call from the sheriff's office? No. It's not the deputy's fault. It's not the detective's fault. When you've got cases that are stacked up this high, there's no possible way you can go through that whole stack and call every person in there and go, do you know anything else about your crime that might help me solve it? Is he going to have time to leave the office and come out to your house and look around and see if somebody's putting a roof on? If there's something new going on close to your house where there's laborers working? Because that's where a lot of the crime comes from. Somebody that comes through your community. We had a burglary in Islesworth the other day. And that was a worker in the community. And a reserve deputy, he's a great guy, he's a hard worker, he took one latent print off a sliding glass door. And we caught the guy in Islesworth now. That's a pretty protected community off of a thumbprint because a reserve deputy took the time to do his job. When you got a detective facing this, the sheriff's office should be the one leading the way. We should be training other agencies. We should be at the top. We should be the cream of the crop, teaching all these other agencies how it's done. Right now, it looks like we need to go to some of these other smaller cities and say, how are y'all clearing your cases? And it shouldn't happen that way. It literally is a shame that we're not getting bang for the buck. And as your sheriff, I'm going to make sure that we're training our deputies to do their job, but I'm not sending them to Disney World to stay at a hotel, and that has happened. And I'm not sending them to Georgia to put them on some reservation where they can go and learn about whatever. It's your money. If I want to teach an agency, I want to teach the whole agency, and I'm going to bring the instructor here. It's like Richard Mack. If he has something to offer, I want him to offer it to the agency. I want all my people to understand what the statutes are, what the laws are, and how to comply with what we need to do to keep you safe. Plain and simple. That's all my job's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about simple, effective. What did sheriffs in the old days do? They come to your house, kick down your door, knock over your still, kick your rear end, wipe you off, put handcuffs on you, take you to jail, and the next morning they come back and feed your family because they knew that if they had you in their jail, somebody had to feed your kids. That's what it was about. And that's what I want to do as a sheriff here in Lake County. It's my commitment to you. It's my promise to you. I hope that 4 years from now, I do not have to run for office because I hope that you hear me out all the time throughout the 4 years doing events just like this. If y'all want to hear me talk, I'll come talk because it's what you pay me to do. My wife asked me, well, what kind of hours would you work if you were the sheriff? And I said, I tell you what, I'll start out in the morning. By 3 o'clock, I'll be taking a nap because the people at night have a right to see me just like the people during the daytime do. The deputy on the street and the people in the community. And when am I going to see more people in the community? I'm actually going to see them in the evening more than I'm going to see them during the daytime because a lot of them aren't at home. They're in Orlando working. All right? Sorry to take up so much. Yes, sir?
You referenced Sheriff Joe, who I admire. Have you decided that we're going to use pink underwear on the prisoners or mixed baby?
I'm not sure that pink will actually affect their psyche. So what I was thinking was the type of underwear. The whole thing is about making them not want to come back. All right?